Hello, my magical creative creatures. This is Ro from the Illustrative Witch. Today I'm filming a quick little tutorial as per requested through my inbox on Tumblr about how I've made my grimoire and how I've prepared pages for all kinds of uses and things. So you only really need a handful of supplies that are relatively affordable, especially if you have student discount. Student discount is your friend. Take advantage of it for as long as possible. Or if you're an educator, many stores offer an educator's discount, so look into it. But I digress. So the first thing you're going to need is a book. Now, where do you get your book? There's a variety of places you can go for your book. For me personally, my mother is the kind of person who likes to hold on to some things that she believes to be important, or that she thinks I might want later on in the future to share with any children that I might have or something like that. It's very thoughtful. So I actually was going through a box of books because my younger cousins were looking for new things to read, and I wanted to dig through the box of books first to make sure there weren't any books that I wanted to hold on to. Again, for future generations, I do intend on having children one day. Not anytime soon, though. I'm a little too young for that. And I actually found this book, which I thought was the perfect size for me, for a grimoire, for somebody who's constantly on the go, and for somebody who thrives off keeping her tools very close and very personal. I carry this with me everywhere. Doesn't matter if I have any ideas or anything like that. I just carry it with me. I do. So I grabbed this. I also grabbed another book that happened to be a duplicate, essentially of several books that I had, and I ended up turning that into essentially a shrine book of sorts, for the Theoi. For anyone who doesn't know me very well, I keep my religious practice kind of separate from my witchcraft practice, only because that's just my belief and how I choose to view witchcraft and spirituality. I view them as separate things. But anyway, so I lucked out and I had some extra books in storage. So you may want to look into your personal library and see if there's any books that perhaps no longer interest you. You just don't read them anymore. Maybe you're thinking about giving them away. And if you want to still give them away, there's nothing wrong with that at all. But, it's another way to consider giving your book new life. So that's what I did with this. I actually don't remember what this book used to be. I think it was a collection of short stories, if I remember correctly. But yes. Other places you can get your book. I would say go to a thrift store if you can find one. Most towns have a local Goodwill. And Goodwill sells all kinds of things. Granted, I know that some people don't view the chain with the highest regard, so also try looking into other thrift stores as well. I am very fortunate where there are actually a variety of thrift and antique stores dotted around the city. But yes, you can pick up hardcover books usually for under $5, and most thrift stores usually have like a $1 and under section. Also try going to a used bookstore as well and see if you can find anything there as well. Usually you can find books for very, very cheap, depending on how the store likes to price their items. If that doesn't work, you can also try going to your local library and see if they're giving any books away. or if you're a university student, you can also try. I actually did this recently. I snagged a couple books um, for experimental sketchbooks. What you can try is if you go to a university, or if you attend a university, you can try seeing if your university's library cycles out any books to give away. Most library books at a university, or at least from my university, are hardcover. So you can snag a couple of those books and make use of them. Yes, and if anybody else has any other suggestions of where to get books, actually, one last suggestion: you can also try the clearance section of your local Barnes and Noble. I was actually just there the other day, and I saw books for like $8 and under, which is not a terrible price, especially if the subject matter completely bores you. But it would make a perfect base for your grimoire. So do with that what you will. As for other supplies, if you think you'll need it, if you want to work with other materials on top of your pages, I do recommend getting gesso. I believe this bottle was about $9 from Blick Art Supplies. If you are a student, I think you can sign up for, or an instructor, you can sign up for this preferred card. And I think it gets you an extra 15% off if you're a student or an instructor. If this is a bit pricey for you, as I understand it will be for some people, I also suggest trying the matte acrylics. I actually just purchased this white one. It's supposed to be pearlescent. I am going to try it on a couple pages and see what it looks like. I also like to purchase the black acrylic. I think I've only purchased 2 bottles so far, and each bottle is about, I think it's under $2 before tax. And personally, I like making my pages black, specifically because black is a neutral color to me. It's kind of devoid of meaning, in my personal opinion. If that's not the case for you, you can also try mixing colors and using other neutral tones like tans and grays and browns. Yes, you'll also need some brushes. I bought these, were part of a 3-pack in a basic brush set. I usually only use this brush right here, which is 2 inches wide. And you'll need a cup, jar, container of water. You won't use a lot of it, but just to thin out the paint a little bit if you're working and it starts to get dry. Additional items you may consider if you're going to be gluing items into your grimoire. If you're going to be gluing in entire pages, I recommend getting some PVA glue. I believe I purchased this a while ago, so I honestly do not remember the exact price, but I believe it was under $10 for a bottle of this glue. PVA glue is intended for working with paper. It is especially used in bookbinding, and this is also very great for any witches who decide they want to make their own book. This is your friend. And this has also helped me repair my book a couple of times in some spaces, so I personally think it's worth the investment. However, if you're just gluing pages in, glue sticks are also fine. I was using a glue stick for a little while, so some of my pages are a little bit stiffer because of it, and that's okay. I personally do not have an issue with it, but for something that I do need, the upside for PVA glue is that it's flexible. So if you said, for example, glued something onto this page, normally with a glue stick it's kind of a little bit stiff. It almost becomes a little bit cardboard-like. With PVA, it should remain flexible, like it's still an actual page. As long as you're using a page that is about the same thickness as what's in your book, which might sometimes be difficult to find. So approach with caution is all I can say. But yeah, I think that covers the basic supplies, and I'll just show you really quickly how I paint over my pages. It's really it's nothing too special. There's no grand mystery to it. But typically what I do with these black acrylic paints, they do have an opening on the top that allows for paint to come out. However, it's kind of slow for my tastes, so I typically just unscrew the cap off of them and very carefully kind of just dab the bottle on the page. I usually get a little, oops, that's a bit much, but you usually get a little glob of paint. Actually, that might be just right. And I tend to spread it on both pages just so that I already have it there. And I hold the book open with my non-dominant hand, just to make it easier on myself. And just spread the paint out as far as I feel necessary. Sometimes I do go to the edge of the pages. Sometimes I just leave it looking like a Rorschach ink blot. Depends on my mood. Usually it's looking more like a Rorschach ink blot, just because I personally don't care for that super clean look. I think it looks more fun this way. And see, this is where I'm starting to get a little bit more dry brush. So I'll dip just the very edge of my brush into the water jar, and it just helps to smooth out and water down the paint just a little bit. And I like to get right into the crevice of it, so that when I spread open the book into if I want to make it a 2-page spread, there aren't any gaps or anything like that. Again, this is a personal preference. I do have a couple pages where the entire page is not covered, and it's more like just, you would see a cloud of black, white space, cloud of black. Again, complete personal preference. It's your book. You do what you want with it. And like I said, you can go all the way to the edges if you want to, but you don't have to. You can use any color you'd like. I actually plan on getting some more colors. I don't like to stick to just one color scheme. I like to have a variety of colors. That's just the kind of person I am. I actually think I need a little bit more paint. I thought I had too much. Oops. But yeah, so if you're only going to be working in one book, I usually like to work in multiple, but if you're working in one book, that's also fine. You will be working on it for a while, so I suggest you hop on Netflix and put on your favorite movie or your favorite TV show. I usually like to watch The Craft or How I Met Your Mother for some reason when I'm working on my grimoire. I know that there's two very polar opposite kinds of media, but it's what I like. And also, if you're only going to be working in one book, acrylic paint, especially even watered down, will take roughly 5 to 10 minutes to dry, maybe even 15, depending on the temperature of the room and the levels of humidity. If you don't want to wait, I suggest you use a hairdryer to help the process along if you have one. If not, just be patient, wait, because what will happen is if you do not wait and you close the page and you go on to the next one and you start painting, the wet pages will stick together, and when you try to pry them apart, some of the pages will rip a little bit or rip some of like the fibers off of the previous page. It's not a pretty sight. You can paint over it, but it makes the page a lot thinner. For me personally, I usually just end up pasting something over it if that does happen, because it has happened a couple of times. Yeah, so very simple. I will show you really quickly like what the result of a gessoed page is. You can kind of see the text through the book, from the book, a little bit. It's definitely not hidden. If you think this might be interesting to you and you can like find some hidden messages in your book or something like that, by all means leave it as it is and just embrace it. Personally, it could make for something very interesting. Personally, I am too familiar with this book. If I read some of the passages, I start to remember what the book is for. So I will probably just cover it with either another color or some collage work. That's my personal preference. If it's not something that bothers you because you'd rather have a more blank canvas to work on top of, that's completely fine. I think I was going to say something else, but I think I've covered just about everything. So yeah, very simple stuff. Not hard at all. Just make sure that you have a surface to work on top of. Like I'm working on top of a cutting mat right now. I'm also working on the floor, not on my bed or anything like that, or anything with fabric. Make sure you are wearing clothes that you're okay with getting messy, like scrap t-shirt and jeans, because chances are at some point a little bit of paint will splatter. I do recommend laying out a little bit of newspaper. But yes, I hope this was helpful to some of you. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. And thank you for watching. Have a lovely day.